The Star Sport podcast is brought to you by Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years.
Close your eyes and pull like a dog.
And a new Irish record for Phil Healy, 22.99.
Christy Cooney hands over the Sam Maguire Cup to Graham Canty, Cork All-Ireland champions for the 7th time ever.
Hello and welcome to the Star Sport podcast. My name is Jack McCarran of the Southern Star and I'm joined by Star Sport editor Kieran McCarthy. Before we kick things off, I'd just like to give a gentle reminder to our listeners and viewers as always to please rate, review and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and YouTube. The Star Sport podcast is brought to you in association with our friends at Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, where your bank really does matter. Choose the credit union, choose local, choose community. On this week's podcast, we're going to hear from Cork and Enniskeane camogie star Orla Cronin. Orla is swapping her hurl for a shovel this month as she embarks on her latest challenge, a charity mission to Africa. The Enniskeane woman is one of 50 GAA players that have signed up for the Planet Games as the GPA, Warriors for Humanity and Self-Help Africa have united forces with the goal of raising enough money to plant 1 million trees in Africa, as well as highlighting the impact of climate change. But Kieran, before we chat to Orla, there are a few more bits of news I want to cover. And the first up is the news that Gavin Coombs is back with Munster ahead of their clash with South Africa A at Páirc Uí Chaoimh on Thursday evening. There's no doubt Gavin will be disappointed to have been left out of Andy Farrell's Ireland squad, but this is a big chance for the Skib man to show the Ireland coach what he's missing.
100%. And what a huge game in Páirc Uí Chaoimh on Thursday night. And it's a sold-out Páirc Uí Chaoimh as a South Africa team take on Munster. And it's good news for the fans that didn't get tickets. The game is live on Virgin Media too, and I think we'll all be tuned in for that. But like I said, I think Gavin will be disappointed. I suppose he's been released back into the Munster squad for this game. Gavin played with the Ireland A team that were taught a lesson, to be honest, by New Zealand last Friday night in that in that match up in Dublin. That was a really good New Zealand team, and that Ireland A team just never clicked. They never got going, and it was a heavy defeat they suffered. And I suppose the Ireland senior team, or the Ireland main team, as you call them, they had such a good win against the Springboks then on Saturday night, and they have games against Fiji and then Australia coming up as well. But while Gavin, now we know he won't be involved against Fiji, this is a chance for him, like you said there, to show Andy Farrell what he can do against world-class opposition. Gavin has been in and around the Ireland squad for the last couple of times that they've met up, and he impressed on the tour to New Zealand during the summer when he had 2 try-scoring games for the Ireland A against New Zealand. So I'm sure the Ireland setup, they know all about Gavin Coombs, what he can do, and when Gavin hits top form, like, he's an asset to any team. And hopefully, and fingers crossed, that Gavin will do enough over the next couple of weeks and months to, I suppose, first to get into Ireland's Six Nations squad and then put himself into position to get on the plane for World Cup 23 in France, in 12 months' time. But first things first, if Gavin Coombs can put in a strong performance against South Africa, it can only help his chances. It can only help his chances for Ireland going forward. And before we move on, just I suppose a quick word on Shannon's Jack Crowley, who also came on for the Ireland A team against New Zealand last weekend. He was also kind of involved in the match day team for Ireland against the Springboks, and that was really clever, I think, by Andy Farrell. From what I saw, Jack Crowley took part in the warm-up ahead of that game against the Springboks, and he actually brought the tee on at one stage when Johnny Sexton was taking one of his kicks. So I think that's clever by Andy Farrell to almost integrate Jack Crowley into that senior setup and show him what it's all about. And a huge day against the world champions in a heaving Aviva Stadium in that high intensity game like that. So it's a positive for Jack Crowley. And the fact that he wasn't released back into Munster, does that suggest, Jack, that we could see Jack Crowley appear against Fiji this weekend?
Possibly so, and he was extremely impressive for Munster against Leinster despite their loss at the Aviva a number of weeks ago. So he's definitely turning heads within the Ireland setup. Another story, Kieran, that's been making the rounds is that Castlehaven's Damien Cahalane has once again ruled out switching codes from the Cork hurlers to the Cork footballers, despite his uncle John Cleary being in charge of the footballers. And Kieran, is this one that we're going to look back on as a player that got away from the Cork footballers because of his dedication to the hurlers over the years?
He's probably kind of closes this chapter once and for all, because over the last couple of years, there's been a couple of opinion pieces included in the Southern Star, just wondering, would Damien Cahalane come back to the Cork footballers? Because there's an opinion out there that he's a better footballer than a hurler. And I've seen Damien Cahalane play football for Castlehaven, and he's such a good long range kind of foot pass. He's such a powerful player on the football field as well. But he made his bid many years ago when he switched to the hurlers. And since 2015, which is 7-8 years ago now, he's been hurling only for Cork. And he's 30 years old now. And even though, like you said there, his uncle John Cleary is now the Cork senior football manager, Damien was up in front of the media last week ahead of the AIB Munster Club Senior Hurling Championship, and he did kind of close the chapter. He said that I would imagine at this stage that I've kind of made my bed. I've loved it. There have been tough times at hurling, but more better times than tough times. I've loved every minute of it, and I'm still trying to improve as a hurler and looking forward to next year. So we can take it from that Damien Cahalane has his focus firmly on the Cork hurlers next year. And is it a loss for the Cork footballers over the years? Yeah, 100%. I think it was. I think Damien could have been an asset to the Cork footballers. But at the time when he decided to opt for the hurlers, there was more potential in them than there was in the Cork football team. And as we know, this Cork football team has struggled in recent times, and not even the lure of having his uncle in charge seems enough to get Damien back in a Cork football jersey. So I think it finally puts the story to bed once and for all.
Okay, Kieran, and then the last story we're going to touch on this week before we hear from Orla Cronin is a story that's just gone live on our website in the last few minutes. So if you're interested in what we have to say about it, just go to www.southernstar.ie/sport and you'll see it at the top of the sport homepage. It also featured in last week's Southern Star, and it is that Newcestown athlete Jane Buckley, who you wrote, is turning heads stateside. So that's a little teaser. What more can you tell us about Jane's story?
Jane is from Newcestown. She's 19 years old. She swapped West Cork for America in August. She started an athletics scholarship with Providence College in Rhode Island, and she's already making a name for herself, Jack. She had a huge win recently at the Big East Cross Country Championship. She's one of the top young athletes to emerge from West Cork when she won the women's 6K race. And why this is so important and it's so notable, she is only the second freshman ever to win the women's race, and the first, Michelle Hallett of Boston College, won the title back in 1982. And that's 21 years before Jane was even born. So that just shows what Jane has achieved over in America. And it also means that Jane is the first ever Providence College freshman to win the Big East Cross Country title as well. And that Big East Cross Country Championship, Jane explained to me last week, it's competed for by colleges from all along the East Coast. So she was up against the best in the East, but the best from West Cork showed that she's the one to beat. And that's a huge way to announce her arrival in the very competitive American collegiate circuit. And just to think that she's only over there since mid-August, and we're now just the start of November, and she's already having a huge win like this under her belt. I think it augurs very well for the future. So a very exciting story for a very exciting young athlete, and it's up on our website right now if listeners want to read more about it.
You know, Kieran, I've actually been to Providence in Rhode Island once upon a time. Unfortunately, I wasn't competing in high-class athletics races. I took the train down from Boston where I was spending my J1 because we got word that they were a lot more lenient with fake IDs in Providence. And for July 4th, we thought we had to get in to a pub to drink, and we were all underage. So we hopped on the train to Providence, and lo and behold, they didn't give a shite what age you were in Providence. Anyone was welcome to drink in their establishments. So any under 21 listeners listening to this, thinking of going on a J1, I don't want to tell you to break the law, but if you wish to do so, Providence is the place to do it. Now, briefly, Kieran, before we come on to the story that we're going to cover next, which is Orla Cronin, I just want to point readers in the direction of this Thursday's Southern Star, because we have a special supplement. It's the Southern Star Greener Living supplement, and it's all about how to live and work more sustainably in West Cork. The tagline is "Save money this winter," and given the cost of living crisis, who doesn't need to learn how to do that? It also features 25 money saving and greener living tips. So that's in shops on Thursday and online via our e-paper. Now, Kieran, what can you tell us about Orla Cronin, even her next big challenge?
So there's two parts to the interview that our listeners are going to hear from now. The first part is about Orla Cronin and her charity mission to Africa as part of Plan to Planet Games. And the second part of our conversation is very much about her frustrating season with the Cork senior camogie team, when she eventually had to relent to injury after injury and hop off the Cork panel. I think it was in early July. But first, to what Orla is up to later this month. So Plan to Planet Games, it's an initiative with the Gaelic Players Association, Warriors for Humanity and Self-Help Africa. So 50 GA players are heading on an 8-day trip to Kenya. It's November 19th to 27th. And the hope is they want to raise enough money to plant 1 million trees in Africa. And there's a lot of different facets to this. It's going to highlight the impact of climate change while also helping communities in Africa, because when you're planting trees over there, you're giving these local communities it's a source of income for them, that they can grow fruit, that they can get nutrition off and better food. It helps the soil quality. It helps restore the land as well. So there's so many different, like I said, facets to this trip. And it'll also highlight climate change, which also ties in with that special magazine that we have in this week's Southern Star as well. So Orla's one of 50 players making the trip. So too is Libby Cobbinger from St. Cullum. So that's 2 West Cork players who are travelling to Kenya later this month. And they're both raising money right now. So Orla's going to explain to us very soon more about this trip, but it would be great if our listeners could help out and donate for such a good cause. So to help Orla and to help Libby, just go along to iDonate. They have iDonate pages set up. And when you go into idonate.ie, search for Orla Cronin, and you can donate for Orla towards Orla there, and search for Libby Cobbinger, and you can make a donation there as well. And it's all going towards really worthy causes, and it's really going to make a difference to lives in Kenya, and make a difference hopefully to this whole climate change which is going on and so relevant too at the moment. So that is the first half of the conversation with Orla. Then the second half, like I said, we touch on her season with Cork. She was just plagued by injury after injury, and the 2020 Camogie All-Star, who's become such an influential player with Cork in recent years, she felt she was left with no other option just to step away from the Cork panel just to get herself right. And we all know over the years just how competitive Orla Cronin is, so that was a huge decision for her to do, but she just wasn't getting anywhere. She was breaking down, she was picking up these small injuries, she was getting niggles, it just wasn't working out. So she took herself out of the Cork panel just to take that step back to get herself right, and she went back hurling with camogie. She played in the County Senior Camogie Championship with Enniskeane, got 4 games under her belt, and the good news is she's feeling good again. So we got through an awful lot, but first I started off asking Orla about the upcoming trip to Kenya. Usually we're talking to Orla about GAA, but I want to start this conversation by asking you about Plant for the Planet Games and the trip to Kenya later this month as part of a 50-strong GA group. Can you fill us in on this trip, Orla, and why it's happening?
Yeah, I can, of course. So I guess this trip was originally organised by Alan Kearns and his organisation, Warriors for Humanity. So it was actually originally meant to happen back in 2020, but obviously with COVID and, travel bans, that got postponed, and we're eventually coming around to doing it now in 2022. I guess it's, the collective aim between the 50 of us heading over on this trip is to plant 1 million trees. And this is in partnership with Self-Help Africa and the Gaelic Players Association. Self-Help Africa, so they are a charitable organisation that specialise in small-scale farming and, training up these families and communities in these parts of Africa to, in sustainable farming and, allowing them to, I guess, get income, foods and all of that. And, it's very much a sustainable kind of projects that they work on. So I guess our funds will be going to Self Help Africa and, adding to their tree planting projects that they're already doing. I guess like not only is it tackling climate change, helping out these communities and families. I guess Africa, and Kenya in particular are, going through drought, need the support in that way. But this trip will also be a promotion of the GA, I guess, with the 50 of us that are going, and an exchange, between Kenyan and Irish sports personalities, to come together to tackle climate change, I suppose, and do that through sport. So it's a very kind of, it's a historic trip, I suppose, and our aim is to leave a collective legacy. And in the name of the title, Plant the Planet Games, there will be the first ever intercounty game, mixed male and female, played over there as well. So there's lots to it, but we want to create history, and we want to, everyone that's supporting us, we want to kind of take them on this journey with us as well.
And like you said there, Orla, like you're going to leave a legacy here too. And I see each player is committed to raising €10,000, and the money raised will go towards obviously a very good cause, help Africa and planting those trees. Because I suppose for our listeners that just to think about the difference that those trees will make over for the communities in Kenya, like they provide a vital source of food, income and shelter for hundreds and hundreds and even thousands of families. They'll help improve the soil and rehabilitate degraded soil even and land. So it'll leave a long-lasting legacy long after the 50 players come home from Kenya.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess climate change, it's hard for anyone to ignore now. I think everybody needs to play their part. And, while, planting trees may not be tackling the root of the problem, at least these trees are one of the most effective ways of offsetting like a carbon footprint, taking carbon from the atmosphere. I think like a single mature tree can remove up over 25 kgs of carbon. So it's really effective to sequester carbon, and really helping these communities so that they, I guess, can live, in what's really struggling circumstances for them at the moment and in last number of years, and what may continue to worsen as well, unless we take action. So yeah, I mean, they provide food. I think fruit trees, there's passion fruit, there's cashew trees that that are all going to be planted. Like while we're over there, we'll be able to involve ourselves in that tree planting regime or projects that they have going on. So it'll be really, I'm really looking forward to seeing the work that Self Help Africa do out there already. And not only is it just for the trees that will be planted, it will also be, that training and technical support that they get from Self Help Africa that these funds will be going towards as well. Yeah, so definitely, I mean, if we can take action, and if that's just, by starting with planting trees and removing the carbon from the atmosphere, it's going to be a big help, I think.
And like I said there, that all the players are committed to raising €10,000. So listeners to this podcast, and I hope there's listeners and even big businesses out there in West Cork who are going to support this. How can they help, Orla? How can they donate towards this cause?
Yeah, so we've each committed to raising 10 grand. I guess the cost of planting a tree is 40 cents. And there's 50 of us going on the trip, so 10,000 really equates to 25,000 trees being planted over in Kenya. I have a I donate link set up that businesses or anyone can directly, if by clicking on the link, it's on all my social media platforms, and they can donate directly there, or I'd be happy for anyone to get in touch. They can help sponsor and go directly through to Self Help Africa as well. So yeah, I mean, my social media platforms really are the best place to get the link, and we can maybe attach that here as well to this podcast, for anyone to get that link out there, which would be brilliant. Yeah.
And you'll be joined by some very familiar faces on this trip, including St. Colum's own Libby Coppinger, who's also involved, and she's also raising funds. But why did you decide to support this cause, Orla?
Yeah, I think, as I said, I think in the last number of years, we've all noticed the, crippling effects of climate change. And when I was presented with the opportunity, I think it's hard to, deny that really, if you felt like you were giving any bit of support or, I suppose leveraging, the influence that maybe I could have as an intercounty player, and like the rest of the players as well, 50 of us that are going. If we can use our maybe influence locally anyway, to, support this cause, I think that was just immediately something that, attracted me towards it. So, yeah, I mean, it's really hard to ignore the effects that climate change is having on, every country. And I guess what stood out to me was how Africa are probably, only contribute to, climate change or emissions of, harmful gases by about 4%, but they're probably suffering, some of the worst kind of effects of it. So I guess, yeah, that's really my motivation, and seeing this as a really nice opportunity to just make an impact in some way.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant, and the very best of luck in the weeks ahead. And for any of our listeners who want to donate, we will include the link in this podcast. So just click on the link to the Orla's I Donate page, and please make a donation. And while I have you here, Orla, I just want to have a quick GA chat with you for a second and turn it back to the GA scene, because I suppose it's fair to say it was a frustrating season for you with Cork, one of those years where you just didn't seem to get this was the rub of the green, and Lady Luck didn't shine on you, and you ended up stepping away from the panel during the summer because of injuries. Was that a hard decision to make, and how frustrating was this year for you?
Yeah, it was definitely a hard decision to make. It wasn't how I intended the year to pan out, I suppose, for me. Very frustrating, I guess, and I think anyone who's an athlete, has went through periods like this where, they might have unlucky times of recurrent injuries. So yeah, I mean, I guess I was coming into the year maybe carrying a bit of a niggle, which, like any off season or like any preseason, it's going to be tough. So it's hard to, be kind of coming into a tough preseason when you already are carrying some knocks. So I guess it was kind of, I suppose I was doing my best to get back from injuries. And really then when I would kind of go back into the thick of training, it was like I would pick up another soft tissue injury, or, I think initially it was my quad, and then I had a hamstring. So I guess it was just, I really had to try find the balance and getting the load right, getting adequate recovery, but also trying to train. And it was nearly like it just started to catch up with me a bit, and there was also a few things like I picked up like some rib bruising in another game when I had just got back. So I suppose, you have ups and downs as an athlete, and it was kind of one of those years where there was a lot of just unfortunate events that kind of happened, that seemed to catch up with me. And before I knew it, it was in the thick of the season when, you kind of want to be training, pain free and injury free, and I was still really trying to play catch up in some of those injuries. So I think I probably have to look at it and say that essentially they're after forcing me out, and I just needed a bit more time to get them right. So yeah, I mean, it was a difficult decision to make, and obviously I want to be playing with Cork, and seeing the girls even play on in the All Ireland final, it's really tough. But I'm kind of, I suppose, happy that I took the time to get them right anyway, because my aim now is to be fit for the coming year.
Did you feel like that decision, it was the right decision for you to make at the time, because just to step outside that bubble and look after yourself to try and get your body right to go again?
Yeah, I think so, and I think it would have been the fairest on the team as well, just to I think I do everything I could to get back right. And when it wasn't happening, I think there was, it was going to be impossible really to get myself right for semi-final or final or whatever stage, it was at. And I just had to take that step back and get them right. I mean, I played probably my first game, this year. I had just gotten back for the first round of club championship, and prior to that I had just been rehabbing since I had decided to take a step off the panel for the rest of the year. So it was a long year really of rehab for me, and figuring out what the issues were, and getting to the source of them. So I was only really kind of starting off my season in a way when I came to the first club game with Enniskeane, and we had 4 round games, and by the fourth one, I was definitely starting to feel a bit better. My body was feeling better, and I think that time, probably stood to me that I had to just put the nail on them.
Given the success you've had in the last couple of years, like you're emerging as one of the top players in the country, and obviously you're all-star as well. This is obviously the other side of the coin, like, and it just shows for athletes, like, there are tough times there too. So it was a tough, frustrating season for you with Cork, but do you think you've emerged from it? What lessons have you learned from it, Orla?
Yeah, I think I've learned invaluable lessons from it really. It's been a busy few years, not only just with camogie, but with finishing my masters and qualifying, starting work as a physiotherapist. There's been a lot of things going on, and I guess you can get pulled in a lot of different directions. And I guess for me as well, I probably figured out the importance of fueling adequately as well. There's, I guess I was always trying to push myself, that next level, and even in off season, still trying to train. And I guess like any athlete, you want to just get as much out of yourself as possible. But sometimes you need to learn that lessons more too, and giving your body that time to recover, and eating enough and sleeping enough and all that. I guess there's just a few basics of recovery that I needed to figure out for myself as well this year, and giving myself time to recover and adapt again. So yeah, I think I've learned a lot about myself this year, definitely. And yeah, it's one that it's a year that could happen to anyone, or a time that could happen to any athlete. So definitely got to take the positives from it, and go into the season now with a good mindset.
Fitness wise, how are things?
Yeah, all good. As good as they can be, I think. So in the off season in the gym, still keeping up that bit of running. So no injury concerns really at the moment. Positive sign.
And so, like, Cork fans listen to this podcast, they'll want to hear, will we see Orla Cronin back in the red of Cork next year?
Yeah, that's the plan anyway. So looking forward to it. Yeah, it's an honour to play with Cork, and it's brilliant to play at my club. So I mean, really, the club kind of, once I got back to probably that fourth game where I started to feel a bit better again, it's kind of like what you want to play for. So yeah, looking forward to the year ahead.
And having a year like you did with Cork, and then seeing the team go on to the All-Ireland final, of course, didn't finish the way we wanted it to against Kilkenny, but seeing how close this Cork team is to getting their hands back on the top prize again, and knowing that you'll be back, touch wood again, fully fit and flying next year, like, you must be really looking forward to next season already.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And I think the girls are obviously really disappointed with how close they got, and there was really nothing in it. But I think everybody, the hunger is still there, and will always be there really with Cork Camogie to get back to the top. So it's really very, very little in it. Could easily have went the other way this year. So we're not too far off it at all. So yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Did you travel to the final this year, or did you watch it from home, or did you even watch the game? Or
yeah, I went to the game. Yeah, I was in Crow Park watching it. So it was quite funny. Yeah, I was with some of my family, and they kind of speak of how they might feel at All Ireland finals in the past, when I was playing, and I really understood them, when I was there this year, because I was nervous, I was not that I was nervous for the girls, but you just it's funny to see it from the other side, and see how much it means to people watching on as well. So it was a funny side of it. But yeah, definitely, yeah, I was there. It was a different spectacle, definitely, being on the outside the white line.
But even on that, Orla, it must be totally different perspective for a player like who's used to being on the pitch, to be a fan, to walk up Jones's Road that day, even this was the banter outside the ground, even in the ground itself, kind of, it gives you just a different perspective on an All-Ireland final.
Yeah, it really does. And I think, you could be watching on the warm-up or even the build-up before the whistle, is blown, and because I've been involved or I've been with the team in the past, you kind of know, oh, this is what they might be feeling right now, or this is maybe what they're doing. It was very funny, actually, but yeah, I mean, I wanted to be there and wanted to support the girls, so yeah, I think I obviously prefer to have been inside the line, but hopefully now next year we can try to get back there again.
And all our hope is you'll be back on the pitch with Cork next year and all the way to the final, and put the record straight, put Cork back on top. But before that, you have a very important trip to Kenya later this month. So I just want to wish you the best of luck there. And like I said, we'll have all the links where you can donate to Orla Cronin. We'll attach them to this podcast. And if there's any business in West Cork out there who'd like to get in contact with Orla as well, through her social media, or if you want to get in contact with the Southern Star, we can put you in contact with Orla too. So again, Orla, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and best of luck in Kenya at the end of the month.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kieran.
The Star Sport podcast is brought to you by Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years.
Welcome back to the Star Sport podcast. So, Kieran, briefly, before we wrap up, let's look ahead to this week's Southern Star Sports section. What can readers look forward to?
How can it be brief when it's a Southern Star Sports section, Jack? There's so much in there. Even for someone like me, it's hard to be brief. But okay, I'll try this one. So, Holly O'Sullivan's column, he's looking at 8 footballers who impressed him in the county football championships in terms of players that John Cleary should look at for Cork next year. And not surprisingly, there's a couple of West Cork fellas in there. So it's a really good read by Holly O'Sullivan, and that's worth Thursday's Southern Star alone, just to see what footballers he's picked out for Cork next year. And the local GAA front, Ivan Gales are through to the Carbery Under-21 A football final. We have a full report and reaction as they dethroned Carbery Rangers in the semi-final last weekend with Ryan O'Donovan kicking 1-7. So good stuff by Ivan Gales there. Not so good look for Randallogue in their County Junior B Hurling Championship semi-final against Ballyhay last weekend. They shipped 8 goals in a heavy loss, but we have a full report and reaction from that. I also caught up with Joe Carroll, and this is an interesting one, Jack. He's the former Cork Minor Ladies football manager who, if readers of the 42 last weekend would have seen a story where he was outlining his disappointment that he was overlooked for the job for 2023, even though Joe led the Cork minor team to All-Ireland glory. They beat Galway in August. He had to reapply for his job and he didn't get it. So I caught up with Joe Carroll this week just to chat about that and just to see, just suppose he's a very disappointed man with the communication, with the process and what went on. So it's a good read, and I think it shines a light on a couple of problems that need a light to shine on. So that's on page 3 in Thursday's Southern Star. And sticking with Cork Ladies football, we have a story this week about a serial All-Ireland winner who has stepped back from the senior panel for 2023. So I'm not going to say too much more, but check out Thursday's Southern Star for that. What else have we? We've interviewed with Avril Condell from the Skibbereen Ladies rugby team. As we all know, they had a superb season last season. They've stepped up a level this year. So Avril is talking about the challenges that they are going to face. Ballinascarty are also in the County Junior A Hurling Championship semi-final this weekend against Kilchannig. And Matthew Hurley has spoken to their captain, Kieran Nyhan, for that. The Fastnet Rally, Martin Walsh is organising a big celebration in the West Cork Hotel for the 40th anniversary of the Fastnet Rally. So we have full details of that, and a look back at all the 8 Cork winners. We also have a review of the West Cork League as Mizen Hob A, that new team, are keeping the pressure on Clonakilty Soccer Club at the top of the Premier Division. So there's a huge amount going on in this week's sports section, as well as wins for Owen Gales and Ballinhassig camogie team. So as you can see, Jack, this Thursday Southern Star is worth getting as usual.
Absolutely. And as Kieran said, it will be in shops on Thursday. But of course, if you can't make it to a shop for whatever reason, you can always subscribe to the Southern Star online and read the Southern Star on your computer, tablet, or smartphone for less than €2 per week. Just go to www.southernstar.ie/e-paper. Thanks for listening to the Star Sport podcast, and thanks as well to our producer, Dylan Mangan. If you enjoy these shows, please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Slán Tamil.